Rise and shine, my sinners. When Father Evil starts his day, he gets a little deadly. Deadly Grounds coffee has the richest, smoothest flavor you'll find anywhere. It's sinfully delicious. Once you go deadly, you never go back. Order yours at getdeadly.com. Coffee's so good, it's scary.
Nine killed you, 9 shall die, and be returned your loss. 9 times 9, 9 killed you, 9 shall die, 9 eternities in doom.
What kind of a sick school is this?
Uh-oh, Dongo!
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
You got spunk. I hate spunk.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger.
Oh, righty then.
How you doing? Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Say hello to my little friend.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
What are you people? On dope?
Stop whining.
I got a crap on deck that can choke a donkey.
Who is your daddy?
I'm sorry, but all questions must be submitted in writing.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Can I do that?
I'll be back.
A dynamite!
Show me the money!
Don't!
Up your nose with your rubber hose.
A what?
I'm sailing! I'm sailing!
Groovy.
You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Love means never having to say you're sorry.
Here's looking at you, kid.
We got no food, we got no jobs, our pets' heads are falling off!
Come to the coast and get together, have a few laughs.
Hear that, Elizabeth? I'm coming to join you, honey.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV.
I love it when a plan comes together.
What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to
11, exactly. One louder.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
We're on a mission from God.
Hello and welcome to a very special Then Is Now podcast. I am your host, Rigor. Well, folks, we did it. Today is June 16th, 2021, and we are celebrating our 50th episode. Instead of teaching you about an element of pop culture that you didn't know about, we are going to let everyone outside for some much-needed recess. Also, we're going to do a wrap-up of the Abominable Dr Phibes 50th Anniversary celebration, and to that end, we have special returning guests, William and Damon Goldstein, as well as new guest Peter Fuller from the Vincent Price Legacy UK. Plus, we'll have other special guests popping in throughout the show, so we're going to talk all things Phibes, horror, and other fun pop culture stuff. Class, it's time for recess!
I have a bad feeling about this.
How could I possibly be expected to handle school on a day like this?
Food fight!
Hey, you in my class?
I am today.
I think you should consider transferring to shop class. Now, very few students are severely injured in shop class.
Bueller.
When you were in school,
Bueller.
did you ever cut class?
Bueller.
Yeah, I guess I did. Sure, most kids cut classes.
Good, sign this. He's sick.
I get so lonely when I hear that third attendance bell ring and all my kids are not here.
7 years of college down the drain.
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
You lack discipline.
As long as I'm here, there will be no grades or gold stars or demerits. We're gonna have recess all the time. Woo! Go, play, and have fun now!
Okay, folks, we are here on the playground at recess, and we are going to get ready to have some fun. So first off, I just wanted to make an announcement here that Haven Podcasts, which includes Then Is Now and The East Meets the West, is creating not only a TeePublic page where you can get cool merchandise, but also a Patreon page, and that's going to launch on July 1st. I'll have more details later about that in the show, and there will be different levels that you can donate to, and it's going to be fun. You'll have all kinds of goodies and stuff, so we'll fill you in on all that later, but I just wanted to make that announcement first here. All right, now, so for those who don't know, the film The Abominable Dr. Phibes, written by William Goldstein and starring Vincent Price, came out in 1971, and this year, we've been celebrating its 50th anniversary. So we're sort of doing a wrap-up of the Dr. Phibes 50th anniversary celebration, which happened last month on May 20th of 2020, and we're going to have a special discussion on that. Also, since it's Then Is Now's 50th episode, which is kismet, I think, we're going to be having folks popping in throughout to join in the conversation. So we'll also be talking about horror and pop culture and just all kinds of fun stuff. It's going to be a very loose format today. Anything goes, we can talk whatever we want. And I just want to say that right now, joining me are William Goldstein, the creator of The Abominable Dr. Phibes, and his son Damon Goldstein, who's been working with his dad on the Phibes novels and the upcoming third Phibes film, as well as Peter Fuller, who runs the Vincent Price Legacy UK, and Daniel Crowther from Lions of Legend podcast. So first of all, I just want to welcome everyone to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Roger.
Good morning, and thank you.
Excellent. I am so honored to have all you guys here on the 50th episode of Then Is Now podcast, and we're going to have a fun party here. So, Peter, since this is your first time on the show, can you tell us about who you are, tell our listeners who you are and what you do with your Vincent Price Legacy UK pages?
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, so I curate the Vincent Price Legacy UK. That was born out of the fact that back in it's a long story, but like 2011, I attended the Vincentennial in St. Louis, Missouri, and where they were celebrating the 100th anniversary of Vincent. And it was just such a wonderful, wonderful event. And I met Victoria Price. And I said to her, I'd love to be able to replicate something like this in the UK. And she turned around to me and said, my dad loved the UK. It was his second home. And so there in 2015, I then constructed a whole series of events, 5 days, filled with film location tours, presentations, and whatnot. And it went beautifully. And since then, we developed the Vincent Price Legacy here in the UK. So, where we basically continue Vincent's legacy in terms of all aspects of his life, through his films, his love of the culinary arts, and his love of art itself. So I do lots of film location tours. I bring Victoria over and we do lots of presentations together. We tour all around the country here, delivering Vincent's legacy. And so that's what I'm doing at the moment. And my current project, which is it's been a fantastic COVID project, is that I'm constructing creating a brand new cookbook. But I can talk about that later.
Okay, great. And how did the Phibes 50th celebration come about? Because you sort of facilitated the whole thing, right?
Yes, that's one of the things that Victoria and I were doing during COVID, of course, is that because none of us could travel, we were sad that we couldn't actually see everybody. So we developed something called Follow Spot Live, where basically we did Zoom sessions, which brought Vincent Price fans together to actually celebrate different things. So we did some fantastic stuff. We did a St. Valentine's Day. We did a cook-along. We did some presentations of different films. And because it was the 50th anniversary of Phibes, we couldn't miss out on doing a celebration about that. So we brought William Goldstein and Damon over, and we brought in Caroline Munro, who did some fantastic Q&As and chats with one-to-one chats with fans. And she talked about her experiences on set and with Vincent, which was great fun. And also we had Justin Humphreys, who is the author of what I believe to be is the definitive, story to the production of both the Phibes films, the Dr. Phibes Companion. So it was great to have him on board.
Excellent, excellent. So before we get into the Dr. Phibes 50th anniversary celebration, I just wanted to mention Daniel Crowther. You are part of the Lions of Legend podcast, and you also hail from the UK. Can you give us a little bit of information about your show?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's going to be, I'll be honest, Peter, that's going to be a difficult act to follow. But yes, I run a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, so very much within the fantasy genre, and hopefully wherever we can, we like to work in a bit of hammer horror for our players to deal with. And I think the key word you landed on, Rigor, earlier was Kismet. I happened to be listening to the Phibes 50 episode at the weekend, and I think the very next day you messaged to mention that it was also your 50th episode, and would I like to pop on and say hi? And yeah, Kismet, fate, excellent. Coincidence, however you label it, it just felt perfect, and yeah, never passed up on the opportunity to pop in and say hi.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You know, like I was telling my wife yesterday, I said, well, Destiny's calling, and she's calling collect, so we better answer, you know. So awesome. So in terms of the 25th, the 50th wrap up of, the celebration that you guys had, were there any changes for you in terms of the third movie coming up, William?
Yes, but before I talk about that, I want to ask Peter something in that, well, two things. One, what's your cookbook specialty? And two, in your image that I'm looking at, it looks like a World War II radar tower. Is that correct, or
you are correct? This is the Monsal Sea Forts, which I went to last weekend. They are disused World War II radar units out on the Kent coast. We had a very, very special tour of that, and they have featured in TV shows like Danger Man, Doctor Who, and we were very, very privileged to get out there on a private tour.
Well, they also won the Battle of Britain, which was touch and go for quite a while. So, listen, thanks for the look, and that's pretty heroic. To answer your question, yes, Forever Phibes has two things. One, the second death geometry, which our fans seem to see as a requirement to the Phibes story. There was a line early on after Abominable came out that Anton Phibes is no ordinary killer. He has a method, and in that picture was the biblical Gatak from Exodus. In Forever Phibes, no spoilers, but we're using a similar classic tie-in. He's faced with a very worthy adversary, and that makes it touch and go for quite a while. The other thing that we're emphasizing, and make a note of this because this is going to be a continuing story if we go into number 4, we're going to spend a lot of time with the wizards. We saw glimpses of them in the first film. They have since become the Androbots. They are creatures of Phibes' making, and there's a twist. I won't give it away, but there's a twist in the traditional puppet story, which is one of the scariest things I've ever come upon. So stay tuned.
Excellent, excellent. And this question's for Peter, Daniel, or Damon. I'm sorry, Peter, William, or Damon. How was the 50th celebration received?
We had a fantastic response. We almost had like over 100 people, which was fantastic. But we had so much great response from everybody, sort of saying this was just brilliant. We also had, I had actually put together, I had edited the film down to 10 minutes and actually just concentrated on the death sequences, which everybody loved. So basically, it was death after death after death, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
And we also just concentrated on Caroline's performances, including that wonderful scene, that wonderful shot where Vincent actually just like does the dial tone on the phone on the organ, and you've got her little picture.
Nice. That's awesome.
Beautiful picture, yes.
And Daniel, I wanted to ask you, are you a Vincent Price fan, and had you seen The Abominable Dr. Phibes?
I will admit to potentially consternation, and I'll apologise now that I hadn't seen Dr. Phibes before. Price, yes, obviously aware of. I think, like a lot of people of my generation, my first exposure was actually through Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Okay.
Right.
And that iconic laughter that you get with it that lends that signature horror feel to it.
Right.
Right. I did actually have a question, if you don't mind, Rhaegar, and I'm not sure whether it's yourself, William, or Damon who's best. And apologies, you may need to bleep this bit out, but
please, no.
You'd mentioned in the previous episode about taking inspiration for the upcoming stuff from some of Hieronymus Bosch's work. And I had a query there because with some of the stuff we do with the podcast, I do try and look at existing works, but I was wondering how you deal with the creative approach to using works like that are so famous and so well known, making them your own, but still somehow doing credit to the original. How do you creatively approach pieces like that?
I'll answer that right away. First of all, give credit. You have to give credit to the creator, to the writer, to the painter. So you give credit, and that's most important. Secondly, those works are in the public domain. So one of the things that later chroniclers, writers, so forth come across is the question of copyright or other proprietary rules and lawsuits. So you don't want that, and public domain is very important. So yeah, to answer your question, by all means, and they're there to use, and writers tend to be lazy. We borrow, steal, and take as much as we can to save work for ourselves, but that stuff is there to use. And there's one other, and this is big. When you're using, for example, I'm using the Taj Mahal in another story, so that's there. It's global. It draws potential readers, book buyers, and film goers to it. So it's basically free publicity, and
right.
that sounds churlish, and it is, but it's there to use. And you know yourself, without an audience, without selling tickets, you can't pay your rent. So it's pretty simple. But credit first and foremost, credit where credit is due.
Yeah, that's
right.
excellent.
And
Thank
then
you.
there's also the Creative Commons lens that you can utilize other content. Again, it's all going to be public domain, but if you put the Creative Commons, there's some wording, there's some language there, which we've included in our videos. I've produced quite a few Dr. Phibes book videos and trailers, and used a lot of content through that Creative Commons. It's kind of a bylaw for utilizing public domain content. It can be songs, it can be images, it can be anything.
Right. And when I helped you, when I made that video for you, I definitely used royalty-free music on that.
Right, exactly.
So in terms of now Forever Phibes, is that the official title of the third film?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Excellent. And we're confirmed that Malcolm McDowell has been cast in the role of Phibes, which, first of all, I think is amazing. I think I couldn't imagine anyone else playing Phibes other than Vincent Price. And when you said Malcolm McDowell the first time I had you guys on the show, I was like blown away. Like, why didn't I even think of that? In terms of modern actors. Can you talk about any other kind of casting that you've done, or is that still under wraps?
It's still under wraps only because we're in the middle of negotiations right now. So there's been quite a few confidential conversations. So Essentially, the rest of the cast is still to be determined, but it will be determined through the actual process of putting the project together and getting it started.
Right, right. It's so amazing. I mean, especially with the books you guys have done, you've really expanded what I like to call the Phibes verse in terms of the backstory and stuff that's happening between the films and after the films, you know?
Thank you for that, Rigor. That's exactly been our focus, is to keep a common thread throughout all of the media, if you will, all of our venues, our books, the movie, the screenplays. We have a blog page, so and our YouTube channel where we have all those videos that I mentioned, and those are there. We've provided those for our fans so that they, if they need a refresher course, or if they just like the one you produced with us, Rigor, it goes over each book, including the most recent, the Androbots, and talks about Forever Phibes. So we've put that content out there. Our fans have really responded to it. You mentioned earlier, you were a little surprised you didn't think of Malcolm. The fact of it is, it was a chance meeting. My wife and I were walking in Santa Monica, and up pulls this limousine, which was rare enough in Santa Monica, but out comes this gentleman with the bright white hair, and my wife immediately says, "That's Malcolm McDowell. Go talk to him." I mean, it was her idea, really. She says, "Talk to him about Phibes." And I happen to have some recent business cards for Forever Phibes. We had just formed our LLC, and so I had those out, and at her prodding, I went over quickly to him, because he was by now walking pretty quickly to whatever building he was going into, and I said, "Excuse me," and introduced myself really quickly. And I loved his work early on in Lucky Man, and of course Clockwork Orange, and it stopped him down. "Oh, Lucky Man," he says, "that was a long time ago." And then I said, "Well, I've got a project I really would like to talk to you about. It's a Dr. Phibes project. Do you remember the Abominable Dr. Phibes?" And that really piqued his interest, and he said, "Oh yes, love that film." And it was just a brief little conversation, but he said to get in touch with my manager. He gave me his manager's name, and we'll talk. Well, fast forward about a month and a half, we had connected with the manager, sent him the script, and we met Malcolm and his manager in Santa Monica for lunch and signed him up right there. It was my dad, our agent, myself, and Malcolm and his manager, and we had a lovely time. He's a very gracious gentleman, and actually made me feel like we'd known each other a long time.
That's great.
Great listener, and had great things to say. So he really enjoyed the script. He thinks it's a wonderful script, and he's all in. He's all in. He's still all in. That was 2015, roughly.
Wow.
That we signed him on. So the pieces have been long in coming together, but it's about average. If you really look into the timetable for most films, you ask anybody really, and they'll tell you, "Yeah, I've been doing this. I've been trying to get this film made for 10 years." So we're a little bit maybe ahead of schedule in terms of a 10-year effort, but nonetheless, we're undaunted, and we're really as close as we've ever been. We're closer than we've ever been to putting this together and getting Dr. Phibes back up on the screen.
That's great. That's great. And it's great to have someone like Malcolm McDowell because, and I think we touched upon this the last time you guys were on the show, is that, it used to be in any given year, you were guaranteed a Christopher Lee, a Peter Cushing, a Vincent Price movie would come out. And we kind of don't have those horror icons anymore. There are some, but there aren't many. I interviewed one guy named Bill Oberst Jr., who is basically, considered a modern horror icon, and he totally agreed with me on that you don't have people that have embraced that role in life as those guys did. And so speaking of Vincent Price, who of course is iconic, and Daniel, you mentioned that, of course, his voice in the Thriller video is just undeniable. After you had heard him in Thriller, had you seen him in other stuff? Did you start to recognize who he was and catch his movies when they were on TV?
Yeah, he's one of those, I think, rightly alongside the list of names you've got there, the likes of Christopher Lee as well. It's his acting style, his voice, his approach was so, I think, uniquely his, that even amongst that group of actors, he still stood out. And I think you're right. In terms of horror, you don't really have that group anymore. I think, just quickly on the Malcolm McDowell one, I think that's phenomenal. Because I think he's one of those actors who has just had a fantastic career and never seems to dip. And it's also, it's really nice to hear that one of those people who you always assume is a really nice guy then turns out to be a really nice guy. It's always quite reassuring.
Right.
So yeah, and he's one. Yeah, Clockwork Orange. I'd have started seeing him in, but he's also in recent Netflix Castlevania. So still keeping up with some of that horror gig as well on the Netflix shows too.
Oh,
I checked that out. Yes, that's an animated show.
Yeah, it is exactly. Yeah.
So he's doing the voiceovers on that, Daniel. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Stuff.
And good animation.
Yeah, it's really top quality stuff. They've put a lot of money into the production of it, and I think it goes to show if purely just for voice, they're getting someone of Malcolm McDowell's caliber in to do that. So I think that's a fantastic get for him in your film.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to check that out.
Yeah, Castlevania. It's I only watched the one episode really quickly, but yes, it's gotten some high acclaim, and in fact, I think it won several awards already. So that's a hot new one, and Malcolm he's just a workhorse. He loves to work. And why wouldn't you if you're Malcolm McDowell? He's
oh yeah,
he's been consistent, as you said, Daniel. He's been consistently busy. I think he's busier now than he's been in the last 10 years, really.
Oh yeah, and he definitely did a great job in. I don't know if you guys happen to catch Rob Zombie's remake of the movie Halloween, where he replaced the Donald Pleasance character as Dr. Loomis, and again, it was a situation where only Malcolm McDowell could replace Donald Pleasance,
Yeah, that's and it's so true, and that's the thing. We've gone through several. Obviously, we've gone through several iterations with the story since '71, and on all these different scripts and so on and so forth, and so we've had different actors of their time, targeted for the reprisal of the role of the Dr. Anton's role, and we've all along it's been two camps. It's been the camp of Vincent Price / Dr. Phibes. I mean, he made Dr. Phibes who he is, and just like Frankenstein, you can't replace Lon Chaney. You can't do it.
Right.
Okay, so, but they have, and there have been some reprisals, and some of them have been good, and some have been bad. As soon as we mentioned Malcolm McDowell as the new Dr. Phibes, people loved it. There was a time where we actually were in contact with Johnny Depp, and that didn't go over well at all. People didn't like that idea.
Yeah. I agree.
So you have the purists. Oh no, no one but Vincent Price, but they were won over by Malcolm, but not by Johnny Depp. So the new fans would have loved Johnny Depp, but the old fans wouldn't. The new fans love Malcolm, and so did the old fans. So we're batting 1,000 with Malcolm, and thanks so much for talking about it, because he is the lead on this. He's at the forefront of our package, and our proposal to pitch the film. So we're all behind him, and we're so fortunate to have him in. So spread the word, and I know already the fans have just received him with open arms.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And in talking a little while ago about Vincent Price, Peter, didn't you have a recent event with Vincent Price? Was it like a murder mystery? And I don't know if that already happened or if it has yet to happen.
No, because of situations, we're doing that now in November. So it'll be a murder mystery thing. But that's still in the works to be developed.
Oh, okay. And can you at least tell us the basic concept of it?
Well, basically what it is that it's a bit like a scavenger hunt, and it'll be for charity, and it'll be for an American charity. And basically you actually have groups of people who join together on Zoom, and you become you're either a victim or a prosecutor, and it's all set on a vineyard. And it's all about a bit like House on Haunted Hill as the premise, but it's set in a vineyard. But we are doing that later in the year, so that will be. Well, we're still working it out at the moment.
Nice. Hey folks, I just wanted to take a minute here to tell you about the hosting service that we use at Haven Podcasts. Podserve.fm. Podcast hosting has never been easier. They do all the work to get your podcast on Apple Podcasts and other major podcast networks. They help you navigate the podcasting world, whether you're brand new or have years of experience. Folks, I can't tell you how happy I am with their service. When I first started this podcast, I searched around intensely for the right hosting platform. I found Podserve and used their simple 4-step process, and in a short amount of time, my podcasts were on the internet and available through all the major podcast networks. And their customer support is unreal. Every time I goof things up and make a mistake, like posting the wrong show to the wrong feed, I email them, and I kid you not, within minutes I get a response and the problem is resolved. And they're the only podcasting host that actually helps you get listeners. Other podcast hosts stop at podcast upload and don't help promote your podcast. Well, Podserve makes sure your podcast is seen by thousands of people. The promotion is free, and they put you on podparadise.com, which has over 5,000 visits a day from avid podcast listeners and is growing every day. Each day, Pod Paradise selects 5 podcasts to spotlight on their front page. Maybe yours could be there soon. Podserve's pricing is simple. Only $19 a month. That's it. No tiered pricing platform, just one low fee. For $19 a month, you get unlimited storage, unlimited podcasts, free podcast promotion, your podcast on all platforms, detailed download analytics, one-on-one customer support. You pay month to month, and you can cancel at any time. And when you sign up, you get 14 days free. You don't even have to give them your credit card. I love their service so much I put a reminder in my phone to add my credit card when the 14 days was almost up. I couldn't give them my $19 fast enough. I'm telling you, I really didn't believe it until I actually signed up and saw my podcasts on everything from iTunes to Stitcher and Spotify and more in a ridiculously short amount of time. So if you've got a podcast and you don't have a hosting platform, I highly recommend podserve.fm. Check them out.
Shark Bites Podcast. It's the greatest show in history. From the Dorkening Network, hosted by a nerd who's named Patsy. From movie reviews to tips on surviving the coronavirus, Shark Bites has it all. Follow us on Facebook and suggest topics at sharkbitespod@gmail.com. Available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
And so, William, do you have any more Dr. Phibes books in the works or any more expansion of the universe?
I'm wrapping up number 7, and it's a departure. I'm not going to give the title because it's different. It covers in very much detail his work with the androbots, and again touches on something very intimate as far as puppetry goes. And there's danger in it. It's set all across America with a visit to Amsterdam. I'm going to ask a couple questions while we're at it. There are references in this book and in others to John Keegan's work. Are you familiar with him?
I am not. Daniel?
Okay.
I'm afraid not.
He's a military historian and a brilliant writer. He taught at Sandhurst, guest lectured here at West Point, recently died, but he has written the definitive history of the First World War. His language is glorious, poetic, but extremely detailed. He does a lot of the most research, most documented of any historical writing I've ever read. And I use him, of course, I give credit to him as well. I use him quotes throughout. One thread in this news story is the 100 Years War, and I take real people from that, and I use them. There is also one of the characters in this story is a Yorkshire Terrier who's called the little dog. The Yorkshire Terrier has a big mind and has a very expansive outlook and has a lot to say about the cosmos. Anyway, I won't go into a lot of detail, but England and John Keegan are extremely well represented in the story. It is a horror story, so stay tuned. It will be number 7. Damon has started the new nomenclature, so it's the Phibes Cult Classic Series, and now this one will be book 2 of the Dr. Phibes Manifest. Stay tuned and hold on to your seats because it's a rough ride.
Excellent. And I just wanted to go around the group here in terms of talking about Phibes. Aside from the Abominable Dr. Phibes, does anyone have a favorite 1 or 2 Vincent Price movies? And Daniel, we'll start with you.
Oh, wow, on the spot, straight out of the door. I'm going to be a bit cheeky and cheat, and I'm going to fall back on animated works again, because and again this is going to seem it might seem quite silly, and when you look at the scape of the breadth of his work, but one of the first times I remember hearing it after Thriller was he actually did a stint of episodes as you'd expect in Scooby-Doo, sorry.
Yeah.
And it was always completely inescapable. Whenever you heard Vincent Price's voice coming out of a character in Scooby-Doo, you knew instantly that, right, there's the bad guy. We can call the show here because we've found him. But yeah, he did a run of a mini TV series.
Wasn't that the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo?
Yes, spot on. Wow, bonus points for knowing the name as well. But I'm going to cheat again slightly and fall back on animated works. But That was
one of my favorites as well, by the way, Daniel.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, very early doors for me, but again, that voice, even coming out of an animated character, was just perfect for the horror vibe.
Well, didn't they actually use a Dr. Phibes character or in Scooby-Doo?
Yes, they did. In the later episodes, he does appear.
And that's Vincent's voice, obviously.
No, Vincent had long passed by then, but then they've resurrected the character of Vincent Van Gogh from Scooby-Doo in subsequent episodes of Scooby-Doo obviously with a different characterization, but the character continues on. But yeah, there is one episode of Scooby-Doo which also I believe has other characters from Vincent's career. I think like The Fly or something else.
Oh, interesting.
I see.
But that might be the Rob Zombie film I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, it's a lot of work to look through and cross-reference. My favorite probably would be The Fly. It's funny you mentioned that because Vincent really, he was kind of an understated actor in that he was always so calm and in control, or his characters were.
Right.
And I have to imagine he was like that in real life. And he loved living life. And he loved to act. It just came off the screen that way. So as far as iconic roles that I could point to Vincent and knowing at least those roles, that would be my favorite. Although I did see The Pit and the Pendulum for the first time. And that was, it was better than I had really thought it could be. So that was interesting.
Right. It was such a short story, hard to adapt into a, hour and a half feature.
On the one, sorry, just quickly, on the one, Damon, you mentioned The Fly. We were talking a bit earlier about iconic characters then being recast and how you can't recast the likes of Frankenstein easily. How do you think The Fly then handled that with Jeff Goldblum then stepping in?
Not real. I'm not yeah, I may step on some toes here, but I'm not a huge fan of
Cronenberg.
Of that actor. I'm just not, and so I didn't really like it. The makeup and the special effects were phenomenal, but again, they pushed it too far. The original Fly, that was horrific enough, and they took the Fly in the new one, the makeup and everything, and just made it as disgusting as possible. So.
It definitely shifted towards that the gornography that you see so popular these days instead.
Well, and that was the 80s. So that was I just want to say that was Cronenberg, David Cronenberg, the director, and his thing was body horror. All his movies deal with body horror of some kind.
Right. And so yeah, I'm not trying to step on toes or knock the effort, but for remakes or changing of the guard for the lead actor. No, I don't think Jeff Goldblum did. I don't think he even came close to the original and Vincent Price. Not at all.
I think it's something of a similar parallel to, you mentioned the response to Johnny Depp, in that I think it's the same for the two of them, where the actors are so big and have such a standard acting approach through all their films, I think it's probably fair to say, that you couldn't watch it without being fully aware that rather than it being the character, you're watching the actor. So the immersion disappears somewhat.
Right.
I think so. I think that's right. I think that's accurately spotted there. So.
Right, and I'm going to say, I think everyone obviously is entitled to their opinion, and I'm kind of on the other side of the fence. Although I'm not the type that generally loves remakes. Like I do love John Carpenter's The Thing, which you could argue is a reimagining of the source novel rather than the original movie. I did enjoy the remake of The Fly, only because it kind of brought it into the modern times, and it was part of that whole '80s gore crowd, and I can see your point exactly, Damon, why, what you didn't like about the movie, and I totally understand that. I know it wouldn't necessarily personally compare Johnny Depp to Jeff Goldblum, only because at the time, Jeff Goldblum wasn't as huge a star as Johnny Depp is now. And there was this thing Johnny Depp said a while ago that really, it just turned me off. He said, he was like, well, I'm not taking he lives in France, I guess, with his family. He's like, I'm not taking my kid back to America till they stop their barbaric ways. And my reaction was, well, then stop taking our money at the box office, because I'm not going to any more of your films.
Yeah.
You know?
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, he's turned his audience off on him. Johnny Depp is, he was at his peak. He really was box office guarantee.
Oh yeah.
And he kind of, stuck up his nose at that, which is curious. Why even become an actor if you're going to?
And also, you have the latest problems with Johnny, with certain allegations about domestic abuse.
Oh
yeah,
right,
yeah,
right, and that's a turn off too. So, and rightly so. People just don't want to even hear about that.
Now, I've got a funny story about The Fly, not the movie The Fly, but I kept quoting the film, the original film, whenever we saw a fly. It was like my wife and I and my grandson. I have a 4-year-old grandson that we take care of. And I would always say in the Vincent Price voice, oh, he's got the murderous brain of a fly. And a fly got in the house, and my grandson damn near had a heart attack. I was like, no, he's not going to kill you. I was just quoting the movie,
Oh yeah. Well, the ending, that's haunted me for years. I still have nightmares with that little tiny voice.
Help me!
Help me! And and it's still all over the internet, and people post it and have little gifs of it, and.
I think that's why it actually outstays, is because it's iconic, isn't it? That image at the end
exactly
is one of the most iconic sci-fi moments of the 1950s.
Exactly.
Right.
And now I did like the twist in the Son of the Fly, where Philippe, not only did they switch heads, the fly and the human, but they kept their brains. So when he was the fly, he's going, help me, I'm Philippe. So he could, he could speak. And that was creepy to me too as a kid.
Right. It was very creepy. That original film was just hugely creepy. You didn't want to ever turn into a fly. So, I mean, that was frightening enough. That'll put people running into the streets like they're on fire.
So, William, do you have a one or two favorite Vincent Price movies?
One of them is sublime, The Ten Commandments. He's Pharaoh's engineer.
Yep.
And we see him with his whip, taking care of the slackers who are moving the 50-ton diorite blocks. But his voice there, that signature voice came out, and the picture itself, every Easter and Passover it plays, it still draws crowds.
Oh yeah,
as an audience. But to me that's one of his trademark performances. Other than that, I'm going to shift slightly since we're talking about odd horror characters. The Fly is one of them in that little voice. The other is does the name Kaiser Soze mean anything?
Oh yeah.
We never see him, but we certainly hear about him and the horror that he creates. So there's an example again of horror, and again, it's the scariest moments are in your imagination. And Kaiser Soze and the Fly's voice are pretty scary indeed.
Oh yeah.
One other thing, gentlemen. Let me. We're talking about impact of what you have done in the recent podcast. Damon has set us up now several Facebook pages, and he made one for me. And in the last 2 weeks, very modest, 200, 250 likes steady in my page. It has bumped up now sevenfold. Now there's 1,400.
Wow.
Why and who I can only attribute to your excellent work and your reach. But
thank you.
Have certainly pumped up. So hats off to you, Peter, especially, and Roger. Mr. Crowther, I don't know you that well, but I'm going to credit you for having been part of this enormous outpouring of interest in things Phibes on my Facebook page. I won't mention your name to these people because, as you know, once you're out there, you're fair game. But you have mathematically speaking, you've done one hell of a job. So keep up the good work.
Awesome. Thank you. And so, Peter, do you have a favorite Vincent Price film or two?
Well, it's very difficult because, Vincent's career actually spanned over 50 years in every genre. A lot of people actually sort of say, oh, he's the horror actor, but in fact, he's not. He's a versatile actor who did so much over so many years. So I have a real problem. I have to actually say, what's his favorite horror performance? What's his favorite comedy performance? What's his favorite,
Right.
So I would have to say for me is that his favorite comedy performance was Champagne for Caesar, which is one of my favorites as well. And if you've seen it, it's like one of the best satires on consumerism. It's way ahead of its time. But of course, deep down in my heart is the one I watch over and over again is called Theatre of Blood, because that just like nails every single thing that he did in his horror career, in terms of overarching theatrical performances, and also bookends his fantastic sort of madman roles. So I've got two films really.
Nice. And I have to say,
I want to say, there's one thing I want to say
is
William is also, I love the 10 Commandments, him as backup, because I always recite one thing all the time. Every time we actually watch 10 Commandments, which we watch every Easter, I always have to say, I go, you see me drive my chariot. I can flick a fly from the horse's ear without breaking the rhythm of his stride. You see my lip whip.
That's awesome.
I love that scene. That's
so cool. Yeah, such a great movie. Oh man. So for me personally, all right, so I grew up in the 70s and I can't tell which came first, the Vincent Price movies or the TV shows, because I know for a fact that my friends and I would talk about him and Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee on the playground. And I distinctly remember him from his appearance on 2 episodes of The Brady Bunch. And, you guys had said, the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, and his voice was so distinct. We had another show from Canada called The Hilarious House of Frightenstein that aired here early mornings, and it was kind of a kids show, horror host, there was monsters, and Vincent Price did the opening host segment. And so I always kind of knew who he was growing up, whether it was that or his films on, in Boston, we had Creature Double Feature, or on the late night shows. But it wasn't until, I'm going to say I was in my early 20s and I worked at a Blockbuster Video and I rented a movie of his that I hadn't heard of called The Haunted Palace. And that, after I saw that fast became my favorite Vincent Price film, because even though in the credits they list it as an Edgar Allan Poe story, it is not. It's a H.P. Lovecraft story. And it's based on the Lovecraft story called The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. And there's a scene in it where the character of Dexter Ward ends up being reincarnated in Vincent Price. And he does this turn, and the camera's sort of revolving around him, and you see him kind of going through this kind of change, but it's not physical, it's all mental. And from there, he's a completely different character. And that made me love him and love his range as an actor, because he could completely turn from being one kind of a guy, a nice, normal person, into this sort of really evil, kind of nasty Dexter Ward. It was just really, that to me is my favorite Vincent Price film.
Yeah, that's a perfect one. That's a great one. Yeah. And also, it was one of the ones I actually, probably one of the only films of Vincent where I actually became quite disturbed by his character.
Yeah.
Unlike especially that scene where he actually basically sexually assaults his wife.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You know, Deborah Paget. There's a bit was like, it's your turn. It's like, it was horrible. It's horrible.
Oh yeah.
Well, he does.
I must admit, Roger, you just sprung something, Tom, to me. Is that also is that I, even though those are the two films that I actually selected as my favorites, is that I actually started watching Vincent, like you, on TV because, we were all quite young. And The Brady Bunch was one of the first things I ever saw as well.
Right. Right. And my parents as a kid took me to see one of the, I think it was at the Orson Welles Theater in Boston. They played the House of Wax in 3D. And I think at that point, I was probably 10 and I knew who Vincent Price was then, but that was such fun.
Well, he did, he has that whole other career as film noir, bad guy. And he's in several notable film noir films.
Yeah, Laura is one of his best films again, where he's playing a Shelby Carpenter. Basically, he was basically a male prostitute.
Right. I mean, Dragonwyck is really good.
Dragonwyck is absolutely brilliant. I mean, I can't believe I watched that just 2 days ago again, and it still impresses just how horrible he is. It's all about domestic abuse. It's all about just his, because he's a drug addict. And the whole patriarchal society that that makes women actually like less than servants. It's a great film to watch.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I wanted to ask all you guys, since I have you all here, growing up, those of us who grew up in America, that would be Damon and William and myself. We had in various major markets, we had, whether it would be some kind of a creature feature in the daytime on like a Saturday or a Sunday, and then we had a lot of late night horror TV, either horror TV hosts or they would just show horror movies at night. And that's sort of, at least I could speak for myself, is that sort of where I was fed all these movies growing up. And so in the UK, for Daniel and Peter, did you guys have that sort of thing? I mean, yeah. All right. So back in the 70s, we only had about 5 channels, 3 networks and 2 UHF channels. But you guys only had a few too. You had the BBC, right?
Yeah. I mean, Peter, you may know more than me on this one. In terms
Daniel,
of...
go first because I'm actually Australian, so I've got a long story. For
okay.
Well, from my point of view, I grew up in the 90s and we didn't really have that kind of horror anchor that I know that we've just discussed before, Igor.
Yeah.
I think it shows to the extent, the first thing I remember seeing akin to that was Tales from the Crypt, which was an HBO classic. So, the closest we got to that was when some of the American TV started to make its way across to the UK, mid-90s, I think, late 90s. I remember seeing that. But no, I don't think we really had the concept of a horror host.
Oh, interesting. Interesting, yeah. And so, Peter, what about you in Australia?
Well, basically, I grew up in country Western Australia, and because I'll tell you, I was born in '64. We had one channel, and it was done by a power generator, which we actually watched after, only once every evening. And then when we moved to Perth, to the city, we ended up having 3 channels. However, it wasn't until about really 1979 that we ended up having basically AIP had sold their whole back catalogue of their films to Australia. And all of a sudden we had double bills of horror films every Tuesday night. And basically they were all Vincent Price films. So you would actually have Tumor Ligeia plus, Pit and the Pendulum. And then sometimes on a Saturday or a Sunday, you would actually have something like Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine. So all of a sudden, there was all these films actually happening. Now, at the same time, I have to tell you a story. Is that I went to school one day, and I found a cassette, like an old tape cassette on the ground on the way to school. And when I got home, I played it, and it was Alice Cooper's Welcome to My Nightmare. And all of a sudden, I heard this voice on the Black Widow, and I'm going, I've recognized that voice. Now, where have I heard that from? And of course, having watched the Brady Bunch, Get Smart, Voyage Beyond the Sea, F Troop, I thought, hey, it's that guy I keep seeing on TV. Yeah. And now this is the most serendipitous moment, is that one day I was actually down at the newsagent, and there was in the magazine, because I started collecting famous monsters of Filmland. And there was also this British magazine called World of Horror, number 7. And it had inside Vincent Price. So I bought it. And all of a sudden I discovered there was this chap who was actually doing all of this, all this stuff. And it was the same voice. It was the same person. I'm fascinated by this. And then when these double bills came on, I just became an instant fan because, he had the voice. He had he was so charismatic on screen. He could be scary. He could be funny. And I just thought, Vincent Price, you are my hero.
That's awesome.
Well, speaking of those early days, who remembers him as Egghead in the Batman TV series?
I meant to mention that and I forgot.
Well, I pulled that one out from under you there, Igor, but I beat you to it. But
excellent.
Yeah, excellent. and he hammed it up. But that's the thing about Vincent. His process just pulled you in and made you believe in the character, and that's all you needed. He if you gave him even a quick short look, you were all caught up in it because that's all he needed to draw you in.
Oh, yeah. I must admit, is that I've said this to Victoria, his daughter. I said, thank you to your dad, because he only selected those roles on TV because he wanted to do something for his kids, who basically were our age at the time, sort of thing. So thankfully he did that, because otherwise we would never have seen him on TV.
Right. I mean, I remember seeing him on an episode of the Mod Squad. So
no, he's not on the Mod Squad.
Yeah, he was. I just watched it recently with my wife.
Yes, of course. Yes, he is. Oh, yes. Is it the time for Hyacinths? That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
Prepare for a spine-tingling, nerve-shattering podcast featuring all your favorite monsters. You won't believe your ears when you listen to Monster Kid Radio. Hear your host, Derek M. Cook, and his ever-rotating stable of guests discuss your favorite classic and sometimes not-so-classic monster movies. Subscribe to Monster Kid Radio through iTunes or Stitcher, or visit monsterkidradio.net before the next weekly episode of Monster Kid Radio. Go through the archives for interviews with Sarah Karloff, Victoria Price, and Joel Hodgson. Listen to discussions about movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Island of Terror, and King Kong. And don't forget convention coverage from Monster Bash and the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival. Classic monsters, modern talk, and the head of Rondo Hatton, only on Monster Kid Radio.
We come from the retro future. We want you to be nostalgic for what's to come. A new channel and distribution network for smart people with bad taste, featuring content from Church of the Subgenius, Creature Features, Cinema, Insomnia, Sleazy P. Martini and Quar, Trauma, Corey Maccabee, horror, sci-fi, Saturday morning cartoons, midnight movies, and assorted trash we love. Add our channel OSI 74 to your Roku player or visit OSI74.com. All systems go.
It's so good. So Damon, in terms of your growing up and either in the movies or watching, horror shows on TV, what did you have that exposed you to all these things?
Well, certainly we had a TV show called Creature Feature in San Francisco.
Oh, was that with Bob Wilkins?
There was and I thought he was local to San Francisco at the time, but that's really all I looked into the host of the show. But I would watch that regularly. And then I grew up in the 60s, so I'm very close to your experience, Peter. But nevertheless, that's where I got my exposure. And I, seen television go from black and white to color. That was the era that I really watched TV and was exposed to any of these films, and seen some of them in. I went to the premiere in San Francisco for the Abominable Dr. Phibes at age 13. So, and I got to bring all my friends from the block. There was a lot of young kids on the block we lived on, all good friends, and took them down. Hosted the premiere of the film for them. I can remember it. There was a huge theater back then. They were huge. The movie houses, really.
Oh yeah.
With a lot of the Art Deco or even Art Nouveau interiors, the concession stands. It just was all, this was all high-end entertainment. And so showing up and my dad being the one, and my godfather Jim Whiten being the ones to write the screenplay and see their names up there on the screen. I mean, you really can't ask for anything more. I've been so fortunate, and I don't want to bore anybody, but it really was a dream come true for me. Ever since then, watching the process, my dad meeting with Jim. Jim would come up and visit us in San Francisco from Los Angeles, and they would talk story. Jim loved to talk story. He had a whole other slew of characters that he carried around, these specific stories about them, and they were scary stuff. I mean, he would get my dad to let my brother and I stay up late. Just to hear his stories, and they would scare the heck out of us. I mean, I'm not kidding. So it's no wonder the two of them, came up with the Fingers of Dr. Pibe / Phibes. That really did it for me as a kid, and then to actually experience it, go to the movie theater, which I love movies. I mean, that was the whole thing, right? As a kid, you got to go to the movies.
Oh yeah.
Even during school, if the teacher would show us a movie, something like Great Expectations, or Up the Down Staircase, or The Red Balloon. I mean, those were special days, right? I mean, who can forget The Red Balloon?
Right.
I mean, that's one of my all-time favorite films. Great film. So going down to Market Street in San Francisco with the whole gang to see the Abominable Dr. Phibes, I tell you, nothing like it. So that's my huge memory of a kid, and of being a kid, being the son of Dr. Phibes. Essentially, I feel practically related to Victoria, and I hope I don't offend her by saying that, Peter, but I do. I feel that way.
I'm sure she'll welcome you into the family.
Well, listen to this. I mean, just a quick little aside. So there are quite a few similarities. She some of you may know this or not. I'm sure you do, Peter. But she's a designer also. She's an interior designer, and she has her own design company in what is it, New Mexico, or is it?
Yes, yeah.
Right.
It's all around now, sort of thing. So yeah.
So I'm an interior designer as well. So it's kind of funny, because I have a couple other pages on Facebook, namely my design page, the Jag Design, and so I'm all into the contacts of the design world, and I saw some of her original posts. This is dating back before Vincentennial, which is pretty much where I started getting really involved with social media and helping my dad get his name out there, and as the creator of Dr. Phibes, and getting Dr. Phibes Facebook pages set up. So it's just really kind of interesting that not only did I see her early on in the design world, social media, and that we share that, but then to see how she's transformed herself really and become a huge horror fan and a fan of her father's horror body of work, and now especially teaming up with you, Peter, for the Vincent Price Legacy UK. I think it's great. I think it's really kept the fans in tune, the original fans, and I can see you brought in a whole cadre of new fans, and that's helped us immensely, as my dad said. So it's all comes full circle, and I'm enjoying this immensely. So thank you for listening to me and having my father and I in on your shows, Rigor and Peter, and thank you for showing up, Mr. Crowley.
It's Crowther.
I'm sorry.
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
Crowley, unfortunately, is one I get fairly often because of
Alistair,
the famous Alistair. Yeah,
Oh, right,
exactly.
right.
So that was a nickname growing up. So not a problem at all.
Crowther. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm sorry, Daniel.
Not a problem, David.
So William, can you tell us a little bit about your growing up, your experience with horror films, and how that sort of led you onto the path to Dr. Phibes?
Hi, Roger. I'm really sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no problem.
I'm really sorry for interrupting the flow. I do need to sign off, I'm afraid.
That's totally fine.
I've got my group rating to record.
That's totally fine. Go right ahead. Thank you so much for joining us, Daniel. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, I just want to say very quickly, Damon, William, Peter, Rigor, as usual. Thank you very much for the conversation. All the best with the upcoming works, and hopefully speak to you again soon. Take care.
See you, Daniel.
Excellent.
See you,
Take
Daniel.
care.
Let's stay
Bye.
in touch.
So yeah, William.
To answer your question, there was no television in my growing up time, movies, and afternoon movies were the usual. It wasn't a horror film, but Disney's Fantasia was extremely popular.
Right.
And I went to a matinee, and I stayed through to the rerunning of it after the first show. And I can remember vividly my father coming in and pulling me out by the ear because he'd gotten worried about me. It was no longer the afternoon. It was early evening. He was a great gentleman. That's another story. He died when I was 10 years old. I didn't know him that well, but I can remember that he spoke with a deep accent, and he scolded me for staying in the movie too long. That's an impression.
I don't think I heard that story.
Oh, there. That's your grandfather.
I love it. Well, that was wasn't that a 3-hour film, Fantasia? The original release was some kind of marathon.
It was long to begin with.
Yeah, it was pretty long.
Through the first screening and into the middle of the next one.
Oh, I see.
Other than that, we saw a lot of movies. We made up a lot of stories. The kids I played with, we had our own show. My earliest movie experience was in high school. I wrote the senior show and produced it, and I couldn't call it horror, but that was exciting. But I never saw myself. And I was a chemist. That was my line. and didn't do anything till a few years later, where Jim and I wrote. This was a satire. We wrote a book called The Third Eye of America. Again, so just pure satire. Had a lot of fun doing it. But we had conversations with Federico Fellini, so that was my first taste of Hollywood, if you would, and it was very exciting. Things fell into line after that. I want to say one thing about Vincent and about Phibes, which hasn't come up yet, but which is very important as far as the fans go, and as far as, you know, the term comic relief. When things get so tough and so terrible on screen, you pinch yourself or whoever's sitting next to you and you say, it's only a movie.
Right.
Well, the thing we did with Phibes, it turns out that it's a love story inside of a horror story. And to me, that redeems him. And the feedback we're getting from the fans and from the audiences, that's an important part of their liking him. And there's a scene in the original, and we carry over similar scenes, where he's at the Maldine Square mansion. He's in the shrine room where his beloved is slumbering inside of her rose quartz sarcophagus. We see her, and he leans his head against it and speaks to her. And what is he saying? Well, what he's saying is, if you'll pardon the reference to poetry, he's speaking the first lines of The Good Morrow, which in my book is the greatest love poem ever written. But we hear him, and it's very tender, it's very gentle, and it's the love side of Phibes that comes out. We want to emphasize that because I think it's given, to use a Hollywood term, it's given legs to the original Phibes story, and it's attracted another segment of audiences. So that's my story as far as movies go. Television really wasn't an element,
right?
But, and you have been wonderful as far as spreading the word, so to speak. And I'm using my webpage as an example. You've really gotten this logarithmic increase in fans. And at the premiere, I'm going to invite Roger, Peter, and Daniel, and others responsible to be our guests. I don't know where that will be, but if things keep going the way they're going, it could happen sooner rather than later. So put that on your calendar. We'll
Excellent.
be in touch.
Excellent. Well, that would be wonderful.
Fabulous. Bill, I've got a question for you. You were talking about Phibes. There's one thing I've always been, or I'd like to ask you about, and that's about in your original script, Phibes was originally going to kill Volnavia, but then they actually changed it in the final script. Were you responsible for that, or was it Brian Clements that was responsible for that? And if it was Brian, because it made him less sympathetic if he actually killed his assistant, do you think that was actually made an improvement and made the character more a sympathetic anti-hero?
Frankly, I have to read the script again, because you reference a scene that I don't recall right now. I just pulled out one of the early versions of the script. It's a 240-some page double space. So I'm not going to answer that. I'm going to have to read it first, and then I will respond perhaps via email.
Oh, thank you.
No, you're raising an important question. But if I can riff on what you just said, you know, the final scenes, Volnavia is defending Maldine Square against Harry Trout and the other Scotland Yarders. She's there with the axe in her hand. She destroys the stage with the wizards on it, and then she's downstairs, and Phibes makes its exit. They come down, and with that, the acid spills over her. And mangles her. All right. That scene is almost the end of the movie. In book 3.5 of the cult classic series, it's called Volnavia's Secret, and that opens with Phibes breaking out. He races across the heath in his supercharged trike, and he breaks out Volnavia from St. Daffodil's Hospital for the Criminally Insane. And there's a scene in there where they're racing back to London, to Baldine Square. He's going to reconstruct her, which he does, and that's a whole other issue, which I'm not going to go into right now. But there's, as they're racing across the heath, it's just after midnight. He removes his bandages. She removes the wrapping around her face to reveal this horribly acid-mottled skin. He mumbles some words about to life, Volnavia, to life. We've had enough of death. She looks at him glowingly, and as they round a curve, they pass a milk wagon with the farmer moving the mule coming at them. He takes a quick look at what he sees, these two ghouls in the moonlight, and it lifts him off his feet because it's obviously the scariest thing he's ever seen. Anyway, Volnavia's Secret will go into, in quite a bit of detail, Phibes, how he builds and rebuilds not only Volnavia, but also the wizards he turns into, the Androbots, and that's a whole other, that's the basis for the fourth Phibes film, which is, it scares me when I read it. So
that's going to be fascinating.
That's a spoiler alert.
Oh yeah, that's so awesome. That's what I love about this whole the way the whole Phibes universe is expanding. I just wanted to throw a question out to the floor here for all three of you, Damon, William, and Peter. Now you had mentioned, the premiere of the movie, the third film, and there's no specifics, obviously, just yet. And it could be theatrical, I would imagine, or it could be streaming or whatever. But in terms of theatrical movie theaters, they sort of had been on the decline for a few years now anyways, and then COVID kind of really came in and gave the movie theaters a gut punch. But at least in my experience last year, at the let's say from June to the end of the year, and of course this year, now the drive-ins have been making a huge resurgence because you're able to sort of do that social distancing kind of thing. But do you guys think that the movie cinemas are done for, or are they going to be able to make a comeback from all this?
I don't think
that.
Go ahead.
Let me answer that. We're going to premiere Forever Phibes at the Hollywood Pantages, like the Abominable Dr Phibes.
Awesome.
Yay!
We're going to do that.
Nice.
I think we'll still. No, the theater still stands. And actually, yeah, there's been, for example, the Cinerama Dome has been earmarked for the graveyard, if you'll pardon the expression.
Yeah, I heard that.
The ArcLight theaters and so forth.
Yeah.
On the other hand, traditional exhibitors are digging in. I'm talking L.A. because that's what I know. They're digging in. They are opening up, and the audiences are coming back. So don't give them up yet. And you know yourself. It's okay to drive in. And by the way, the drive-in of the Damned is one of our fan groups that they stay in touch with what we're doing. But you know yourself, the theater experience, you take your family, spend $100, $150 because it ain't cheap. But you go in, the comfortable seats, the popcorn, get yourself a sandwich, hot chocolate or Dr. Pepper. You kick back, the seat is, you can fall asleep in it. It's that comfortable. And the lights go off and then magic happens. You can't do that in a drive-in. You certainly can't do that sitting in your living room. So I think, and this is going to sound gratuitous, I don't think movie houses are dead yet. It's a special form of entertainment, and again, we're going to premiere Forever Phibes.
Awesome.
Hollywood Pantasia.
And William,
well, stay tuned.
William, I agree with you, but I'm going to have to disagree on one point, is that you can do that at the drive-in, because when I go to the drive-in with my family, we bring our lounge chairs, and it is very comfortable lying under the stars watching the movie.
I believe it. Well, they've made a resurgence, and it's out here in California, talking about the drive-in and theaters in general. California, on the macro, for some reason we discontinued the idea, the concept of a drive-in movie theater. But when I was growing up, that was all the rage. In fact, my dad took us to all kinds of movies at the drive-in, from San Francisco area to San Diego area, and then when we came up to Los Angeles. So I don't see those going away. I see those having a resurgence as well. The experience has been enhanced, and as long as they can do that, and Hollywood's going to crank out some movies that will be worthwhile. I don't know how much they've been doing that or achieving that these days, but then as far as the micro, two movie houses that we've been fortunate enough to be invited as special guests to the screenings of the Abominable Dr Phibes at both the Santa Monica Aero under Cinema Emeritique and the New Beverly, owned by what's his name, the actor and director, Tarantino.
Yeah.
So Tarantino owns a theater in Hollywood, the New Beverly Cinema.
That's right.
And we had a screening there as well. He hosted a screening for us there. So I don't, and they're, both of them are opening back up. Just this last weekend, they opened back up and had a grand opening again. So a grand reopening, and so they got a huge buzz going on Facebook. You can look both of those theaters on Facebook, the Aero, AERO, and the New Beverly Cinema, and you'll see a huge buzz. And I think everyone here will get a kick out of looking at those pages. They're fun pages. So to answer your question, I think movie theaters are here to stay, but it's going to take, first of all, Hollywood to generate and make the films and the content interesting enough, because they haven't been doing that. I mean, a bunch of schlock. I go on demand just to see what kind of movies they're getting these days, and their top bills in theater or new releases, they all seem formulaic, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's like buying a car. They have a movie for everyone's, stereotypical likes and dislikes, right?
Right.
And it seems so forced. And it's rare now that you'll see a really good film.
Yeah.
Come out. So it's, first of all, it's going to have to take that. The effort from Hollywood is going to have to be stepped back up. They're going to have to make good films again, and so we'll be at the forefront of that with Forever Phibes, hopefully Pantages Theater will want to do it again.
Absolutely.
But I think, and Hollywood has to make it work. I mean, the town, if you will, quote unquote, is built on that, built on making movies. And all those, I mean, there's a huge amount of people involved, even just for one film. It's a huge amount.
Oh, yeah.
So they have to make it work, and I think they will. those two theaters are big hitters, heavy hitters in the Los Angeles area, Hollywood area, and for them to come back and reopen with such enthusiasm from the fans, I think it's a very good sign, and I think it's a sign that we are going to have movie theaters back almost the way it was before COVID.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I just want to interrupt here for a second here. I think we have another person that's joined us. Spency, is that you?
Hi, I'm here.
Gentlemen, all right, Spency, you're on the call with Damon Goldstein and his father, William Goldstein, who wrote The Abominable Dr. Phibes, and Peter Fuller, who is in charge of the Vincent Price Legacy UK. And I want to introduce you guys to Spency. He goes by Spency Domepiece. He's not only my son, but he was my co-host on the first few episodes of Then Is Now, where we compared and contrasted some movies and their remakes like Godzilla and RoboCop and stuff like that. We also talked about Forbidden Planet, and he was also on board for several other shows that we did. So I just wanted to welcome Spency to the 50th episode.
Hey, welcome.
Happy to be
Spency.
here.
Welcome.
Awesome.
Good to meet you. Good to meet you.
Yeah. Spency's, had the benefit of my teaching him. Like I've always said about this show is that I felt that when he was born, I felt the need to bring him up to speed on all the cool stuff that he missed out on, and that's a part of the reason why I created the show. And Spence, has that served you well, knowing a lot about pop culture, growing up through school and stuff?
Oh, it's actually been pretty amazing growing up in an age where all this pop culture stuff has happened, and I got to see it. So there's so many small things, like so many small references that even, in school teachers would make, and then new pop culture would make references to it. Even small things, even like The Matrix, as recent as that. And me having seen that as a kid, I got to enjoy all of those things. And even when I didn't understand it, I would ask you, and you would probably know. So it was really, really interesting, especially when I had some friends who knew different things that I knew. So I could mingle in different crowds of like people who knew comic books and people who knew old TV shows and people who knew old movies and things like that. So it was really interesting to be a part of all those different groups.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We were just talking about how, movie theaters had sort of been on the decline before COVID, and then COVID turned into a sort of a gut punch. But now they're starting to finally make a comeback, especially in places like California that are just opening up. And, the drive-ins definitely made a resurgence. I mean, you and I went to the drive-in. I think we went to the movies more last year than we did the year before, between that and the cinema pub.
Yeah, that was the most amount of drive-in going that I had ever gone to.
Because it was the only place to go
that summer.
But do you think that the movie theaters are a dying art, or is there still a need for people to be in a social situation where you're in a group of like-minded people watching being scared at a horror movie or laughing through a comedy all together?
I think when it comes to niche films like cult films, and more importantly to the sci-fi and horror genre, there's a lot of importance to the community, because you can go to any kind of blockbuster action film or any kind of romance movie, even if it's a teenage flick. Those all you can kind of enjoy on your own if you wanted to, whereas some of these other movies it's hard to walk into it wanting to see it unless you know what it is. So I feel like definitely having a group there, like you said, horror movies are something it's hard to sit down and say, I want to watch a horror movie all on my own, because not too many people are that brave. So I can definitely imagine that it's a lot easier to, even if you were at home to get friends together, it's still super fun to enjoy going to the theater popcorn, and so many tropes that have followed us into the living room definitely stems from theater culture and things like that. So I think it's gonna stay. I think it's totally gonna stay. It may see a big spike because of COVID and because the lack of movie theaters for a while. Yeah. So I'm hoping for that, but I'm also hoping that drive-in theaters can get some of the recognition they deserve, because Hollywood is more about money, and those are a little harder to make money on because it's a better deal for us.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and one of the places that now besides the drive-in, Spencer and I have been able to go to is what's called a cinema pub, which is a type of movie theater that you go in and it has tables and chairs, and you order a meal and an alcoholic beverage or a soda or whatever you want before the film, and before the movie starts, your food comes out and you eat your dinner while you're watching the film, and those didn't really close down either. I think for us, at least here in Maine, in the U.S., last year, everything closed down from March till about June, and then in June everything started to slowly reopen again. And so between the drive-in and the cinema pub, we've been able to see tons of movies. In fact, I think we just saw Spiral there recently, the new Saw movie, which of course is influenced by the Abominable Dr. Phibes. But now, Peter, what's your experience? Do you have cinema pubs and drive-ins in the UK, or?
Well, it's a very different experience here because of the weather. Drive-ins, because I'm Australian, I was born in Australia, I grew up with drive-ins.
Okay.
And I absolutely loved them. And my best experiences are actually going to see, the first film I ever saw was The Sound of Music is in a double bill with The Deadly Bees. And that was with my family.
That's awesome.
And we saw everything. In the 70s, we saw everything, Grizzly, Day of the Animals, everything was all on the drive-ins. When I came here to the UK, unfortunately, drive-ins don't exist. However, what we do have, we have repertory cinemas. We have bespoke cinemas which deal with, classic films. We've got this fantastic place here in London called the Prince Charles Cinema, and they've been showing Rocky Horror and The Sound of Music every week forever. Right. And now that COVID is actually we're getting back to normal a little bit, we're actually going back into the cinema, and that's hopefully where we will actually probably show a double bill of Phibes and with Carolyn Munro and Victoria later this year.
Awesome.
We are hoping to do the Regent Cinema, which is actually the first ever cinema in London, but we're still sort of negotiating that. But it'll be great to actually celebrate the 50th anniversary of the UK release of Dr. Phibes here and then would be really, really good. So
that's awesome.
But otherwise,
Are you going to broadcast from there, a podcast from the theater? That would be awesome.
You know what? I hadn't thought about that. That's a great idea. We'll have
you can pipe us in. We'll sit with the audience.
We'll put that on the agenda. What a great idea.
We'd love it. We'd love it.
So otherwise, yes, but otherwise, no, drive-ins don't exist, but we do have rooftop cinemas and we have bespoke, things like that. But we're hoping to do it that way.
Nice. So I just wanted to say, Spence, you have limited time here, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to mention to you guys and also to our listeners, last October, we did a series called The 13 Days of Hallowtober. And that actually came about because I was trying to say Halloween in October, and I kind of mashed them up by accident. And I was like, well, that's a great word. So the last 13 days of October, we did an episode every day about a particular horror movie. And the theme last year was like what people consider the scariest movies of all time. And that went over really well. So this year we're doing it again, the 13 Days of Hallowtober, but we're doing a different theme. And Spence, you came up with the theme. I can't talk today. Can you tell us what it is?
Oh, yeah. This year we're going to be doing zombies and basically addressing all the big franchise, big names, and some of the more unique takes on the modern zombie and how it goes. There's a few really interesting films that really break the mold when it comes to the zombie genre. So that's kind of the whole overarching theme of the 13 days.
Awesome. Well, Spence, thanks a lot for joining us, and thanks for all your help. In fact, you guys may not know, I do another show called The East Meets the West, where I talk about Shaw Brothers films and spaghetti westerns. And when I was originally coming up with the idea, I was telling Spence about it, and I was going to do 2 podcasts. And he's like, well, they're both niche audiences. Why don't you just mash them into one show? And it was brilliant because there's so many parallels between the Italian westerns and the Chinese kung fu films that it works perfectly. So, Spence, I have to thank you for that because it's been a great thing.
I forgot that was my idea.
Yeah. All right.
Hey, Roger, have you had Brett Halsey on your show yet?
I have not.
Oh, you should.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I just want to let Spencer go real quick here. And Spence, thanks a lot. And we'll talk later because I want to talk to you about Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Well, thanks for having me.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
Nice to meet you all.
Hello, this is Rod Barnett. I'm the host of The Bloody Pit, the podcast that examines films from across the decades. On The Bloody Pit, we have several ongoing series of shows within the show focused on specific things in genre cinema that I and my co-hosts find fascinating. There's a long-running series focused on Italian maestro Antonio Margheriti's films from the 1960s all the way up through 1990. There's an on-again, off-again series focused on 1970s science fiction films. There's an in-depth look at the Western movies that William Castle made before he struck out on his own and became the horror auteur that we know and love. A look at the classic Coffin Joe films from Brazil. And our long-term project to look at every Universal horror film made in the 1940s. That's a long project, people. It's going to take us a long time. Sprinkled in amongst those are various other episodes focused on other stranger areas of cinema, like Lucio Fulci, Dario Argento, and even some obscure British crime films from time to time. So join me and my rotating crew of co-hosts as we examine the stranger side of cinema through an exploitation lens. Except when we don't. Yeah, you never really know exactly what to expect on The Bloody Pit. So join me for The Bloody Pit.
Okay, so Peter, I'm sorry, you were saying Brett Halsey?
Well, I mean, he's he's done loads of spaghetti westerns, but he's also shared the screen with Vincent a couple of times. Yeah. So he'd be like a good subject for you.
Absolutely. I put word out to Franco Nero, and I haven't heard from him, but we did hear back from Terrence.
Oh, I love Terrence Hill. Oh,
but yeah, so Terrence Hill's coming on the show probably October.
He's great.
He's amazing.
My dad's favorite.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll definitely add Brett Halsey to the list. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah, I've got a contact for you anyway. So.
Oh, please send that to me. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
And this may be an odd suggestion, but I think a perfect example of joining the mashup with the Italian Western and the American Kung Fu with the American show Kung Fu.
Yes.
With David Carradine.
Right.
As the traveling Shaolin priest traveling through America in the what was that, the 18th century or 16th, 17th, something like that.
I forget.
Western days. So
yeah,
that's a great. I think it's a great example of those two movies types coming together, albeit done by American TV show. It could be a good example for people to new fans to understand. This stuff has a long and deep, rich history.
Exactly. And, actually one of the more recent TV shows that took elements of both the Shaw Brothers Kung Fu films and the spaghetti westerns was The Mandalorian, which was a Star Wars show that was presented on Disney+. And,
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, my God, it's so good. It really, for me, it gave me that Star Wars feeling back because those prequel movies were awful in my book. And then the new trilogy was like, it was okay. But this show... It's like you're back in 1977 again, and you're just experiencing Star Wars from a totally different angle and a different part of the universe. But it's so well done. It really catered to us fans who grew up with that original trilogy back in the late 70s and early 80s.
Yeah, I think so.
So, I highly recommend that. So there's a couple other things I just wanted to ask you guys about. In terms of now, one of the reasons, obviously, I brought Damon and William on you guys originally was to talk about Dr. Phibes, and then we knew that the 50th anniversary was coming up, and to sort of bring that back to the pop culture to, like I always say, expose the next generation to stuff they missed out on. And that's one of those films that they clearly need to see. In terms of horror, it's just such an iconic film. Are there things that you guys have noticed, all three of you, Damon, William, and Peter, that you think have sort of been slipping away from our pop culture that maybe we need to talk more about or reintroduce to the next generation?
That's a stumper of a question.
That's a very good question.
Well, the word is relevance, and I'm in the Writers Guild, and the question always is, are they going to love my stuff when these kids grow up? And will the new kids buy my books or watch my films?
Right.
And quite often, the answer is no, because for the obvious reason, you're not trying new things. I'm talking about writing and using the imagination, and the imagination fails, or the brain cells shrivel, or you get too comfortable, or you become autocratic in sitting at your writing table. All of these things condense into the notion of taking a chance, of trying something new, or being willing to try something new. And again, I'm talking at it from a writer's viewpoint. So that's where the question of relevance comes in. And I can tell you, at least in this town, there's a cottage industry of coaches, people who do nothing but listen to where you are as far as creativity, and then giving you pointers on how to get out of the rut and stay there. And I've just heard this last week. A friend of mine is an actress, and a very good one, as a matter of fact, and she tells me that on set, and this is during the actual production, the top talent will have not only an assistant director, but a coach. Listen to this, a coach who will tell them how to play this specific scene. I've never heard of this before, but apparently it's a standard practice, and I'm talking about film production, standard practice for the stars, the names, to have, in addition to makeup artist and hairdresser and all of the other below the line people, they will have a personal coach there to get them through the scene. So there we are. You got to be relevant. You got to use your imagination, and you really have to take risks. Have to be prepared to take risks. That'll get your books sold in the next 20 years, right. And the movies watched.
And when I started the show, my go-to example was always the same. And Peter, I wanted to ask you this question before I give you the example. Are you familiar with the character of Fonzie and the TV show Happy Days?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure. You never know, because I think Daniel that was on earlier, I spoke to him about it. He didn't know. He hadn't heard of it. But so I always use that as my stock answer. It's like everybody should know who Fonzie is, because that was such a huge part of our pop culture, Happy Days, that there's no reason why you don't have to have watched every episode of Happy Days to know who Fonzie is, because Fonzie was just so iconic. Do you know what I mean? So
absolutely, yeah.
So that's sort of my example.
Henry Winkler.
I'm sorry?
Right. Henry Winkler.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got another guest on the show. Charlene, my wife, has joined us. Welcome, Charlene.
Oh, hi, Charlene.
Hi there. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
You're on with William Goldstein, who created Dr. Phibes, and his son Damon, and Peter Fuller, who does the Vincent Price Legacy UK sites. And welcome.
Hello, Charlene.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good to meet you.
We were just talking about, before that, we were talking about, movie theaters and are they going away or are they going to make a comeback? And then I was asking the question, are there things that have left our pop culture that, we need to hang on to and reintroduce to the next generation? Is there anything you can think of? Just to put you on the spot.
Yeah, right. I really just wanted to pop on just to congratulate you on your 50th episode.
Oh, thank you.
And just to say, I know that you're having a lot of fun with it, and I'm excited to see where it goes moving forward.
Excellent. Well, it's all thanks to these guys for being on the show and helping out along the way. We've been doing a lot of Phibes stuff and been tied into the 50th anniversary, which for me is an honor. So,
well, it's been our huge pleasure, Rigor, and that's a question I have for your lovely wife. Now, when you two married, did Roger already have the Rigor character, or is this a new development? And how do you feel about Rigor?
This is Rigor, I guess, was invented or created long before I came into the picture. But I'm sure he told you the story with COVID and just having a little bit more time. He's really developed it, and so I think that Rigor has been around for a while, but he's always kind of morphing into something more day by day.
Excellent.
Oh,
thanks so much for answering. I hope I didn't pry there, get too close.
No, I thought you were going to ask her, how does she put up with me?
Well, I'd have to ask my wife the same thing about me.
I work outside of the home. That's how we make it work.
Right.
He's
home all day, and I'm out at work.
some different area of expertise, and just different area geographically as well. I think we've done that too, my wife and I, with separate rooms for doing work. She's got her own little studio, and I have my own little writing and social media area. So I think yeah. And here's a motto, Rigor.
Yeah.
Happy wife, happy life.
Yep. I was going to say, what's the motto with you, huh? Oh, man. So this has been awesome. So as we wind down the show, Peter, I wanted to just touch base with you one more time about the cookbook you had mentioned at the beginning. And can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it's like our latest new project, which is going to be absolutely fantastic, and it's going to be it touches base with Phibes fans as well, because what we've done is we've created a new cookbook where basically you have 52 of Vincent's co-stars throughout his 50-year career, paired with 52 of his recipes from his various cookbooks. And amongst those co-stars is Peter Cushing, Robert Quarry, who both were in Dr. Phibes Rises Again, cameos and star, but also Terry Thomas, which it has a main chapter because he appeared in both the Dr. Phibes films.
Right.
And he has a fantastic fish recipe, and we've paired it with a wonderful recipe from Vincent. But we've also had Valley Kemp, who played Volnavia in Dr. Phibes Rises Again. She's given us her own personal recipe for something. So this will be something we've put together. It's lots of fun facts and trivia.
Nice.
Great idea to actually, you could watch the film, but actually you could actually sort of sit there and go, okay, I'm going to have watch the film with the co-star and Vincent, and you can actually select your meal and sit down and actually make it. It's going to be a great fun thing, and we're hoping to release it. We're planning to release it on October the 25th, which will be celebrating Vincent's anniversary, the passing of his anniversary, and or a Halloween release. So we're hoping to plan that. Now, we are actually doing at the moment, we're actually still in the design stage. So we're actually asking people to actually sign up to actually get latest statements of what the progress of the project is, because we haven't done the campaign as yet. So if anybody wants to do it, I'm sure you can actually give them the link for it. So
right.
Nice. That's excellent. That's excellent. And Peter, can you tell our listeners how they can find you online?
Oh, yes, you can find me online at the either of the Facebook page, which is Vincent Price Legacy UK. Just type that in. I'm sure you'll find me there. Otherwise, you can actually email me at peter@thesoundofvincentprice.com. And if you've got any questions, just email me.
Excellent, excellent. And, one of the biggest things that we learned in this episode, which was an amazing fact, is that Damon Goldstein is actually the long-lost brother of Victoria Price. So I thought that was
amazing.
I'm sure that VB will have something to say about that.
Yeah.
I want to hear it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, congratulations once again, Damon and William, on the 50th anniversary of The Abominable Dr. Phibes. And I'm going to put everyone's links in the show notes, but Damon, if you want to give us some of the web links where people can find you.
Sure. So one of our main Facebook pages is a group page. It's called Dr. Phibes Cult Classic Series. And just like Peter said, you can type that in, and I'm sure you'll find that group page, which the rules have just changed. So it's anybody can find the page and anybody can request to become a member. Another good one is, I've created a Facebook page for each of the 5 books that we have, Dr. Phibes books that we have out individually. So the best one and the current one that we're showing a lot of stuff because it's the 50th anniversary of the movie is just Dr. Phibes, the book. So that's the first book in the Cult Classic series, which we've continued. And that has 4 books in that series. We have the new series of Dr. Phibes Manifest series with the Androbots kicking off that series. So you can type in any of those titles, but certainly Dr. Phibes, the book, and Dr. Phibes Cult Classic series on Facebook.
Excellent.
And I have a question for Bill. When's the next book due? Because I'm so looking forward to it.
Hey.
I'm in the final edit now. Let me say this, and this is the writer's nightmare. I got done with it. First of all, it was done over a pretty long stretch. And when I got done with it, I didn't know what I had. It was bits and pieces and no connections. So I've been doing other things too, but spending the last 3 months pulling it all together. So now it's all together. Damon does the formatting. The agent is discussing now with one of the hardcore subsidiaries on a 5-section book of the Phibes books. So I'm writing the one sheet on that. He's going to be presenting it. I don't know if you read Isaac Asimov, but Asimov did a similar thing with several of his books. The end result is a 600-plus page, 250,000 word giant. Nobody reads that, but he's got a market. That's what we're shooting for. I will keep you posted. So that's where we are.
Yeah.
Well, nothing like having all 5 books in one volume. That's going to be the collector's interest, and I think it's a great idea. And yes, stay tuned for that book to come out too later this year. So it'll be a full anthology or compendium, what have you. We haven't finalized the publishing title, but right now we have the working title of the Dr. Phibes Compendium. So we'll see how that works out, but it essentially is going to be all 5 Dr. Phibes books in one volume for the first time. So that's going to be a great collector's item.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. And, Peter, when your cookbook comes out, I'd love to have you back on the show. And if you want to come on anytime and talk Vincent Price too, that would be fun.
Anytime. I'm always around.
Excellent. And also, same goes for you, William and Damon. When the next book comes out, let's have you back on the show and keep talking Phibes until the movie comes out.
Fantastic.
We'll stay in touch in the meantime, and thank all of you. You're doing a great service to filmdom, to Dr. Phibes especially, and to your expertise, and we much appreciate it. So thank you again. Take care. Stay safe. Have a good rest of the week.
You too. Take care.
You too.
Thank you, Rigor.
And thanks for having me on.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm really happy.
Yes, Peter.
All right.
Good talking with you again.
You too, mate.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Cheers. Take care.
Oh my God. I can't thank everyone enough who came on the show today, and I can't thank you, the listeners, for listening to the show. Please share it with younger people in your lives. You know, there's a lot of pop culture that's disappearing, and the young people need to be brought up to speed on all the cool stuff they missed out on. Thank you all for a great 50th episode. Now remember, you can send your feedback to thenisnow42@gmail.com. You can also join in the conversation at our Facebook Then Is Now podcast group. Then Is Now podcast is a proud member of the Dorkening Podcast Network, so please be sure to check out all the other great shows there at thedorkening.com. You can also visit our website at havenpodcasts.com, where you'll find our sister show, The East Meets the West, in which we discuss Shaw Brothers films and spaghetti western movies. And Then Is Now is on YouTube, so please visit youtube.com/user/UncleDeath1 to get the latest videos as well as other fun videos. Please subscribe to our YouTube page and also share the video versions of our podcast with your friends and get them to subscribe as well. Don't forget to go wherever you download your podcast from and leave us a great review so that more listeners can find us. You can find us on all the podcasting apps, especially the big three, iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. Class dismissed.
Then Is Now podcast is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. Sounds, music, and clips played during this podcast are the property of their copyright holders. All original content is copyright Jupiter Media.
For more shows like the one you just heard, check out the Dorkening Podcast Network at thedorkening.com.
You know, there's a lot of pop culture that's disappearing, and the young people need to be brought up to speed on all the cool stuff they missed out on. Gotta pick a booger out of my nose.